What's going on, everyone? It's Mike back again, and this is your debrief. Everton 2, Mansfield now. You will see that John's not with me today. He is poorly sick, so just have him in your thoughts today, because the poor boy is being sick, not in a good spot. So look, let's just delve into the game a little bit. Obviously, you would have saw my match reaction. It come out at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and fundamentally, it was a game that Everton controlled. Everton dominated the game. Mansfield, the fans were great. They really generated a really decent atmosphere in that away end, and on top of that as well, I think their players did well. You know, I think they did a really good job on Jack Grealish. I think they did a good job on Enjoy when he come on, albeit he did have a couple of chances and they were tiring. I think they did a decent job on Diblin. It was funny, really, but the sort of defensive line was great. Having a number 9 at centre half is a bit weird, and then him going up front. But I think all in all, they'd be really happy with what they did. And when you look at the style of play that both teams sort of went for, they pretty much let Everton have the ball and were trying to play on the counter, which is it makes sense for a league, a team that's well below Everton in the league standings. But it was just really good that they went into that game with a really good game plan. And to be fair to them, they executed it. Going to a new stadium, under the lights, all of that stuff. They give a really good account of themselves, Mansfield, but I think Everton could have done more. I was relatively, I'm okay with the performance. It wasn't great, but it was enough. And when you're talking about league games and cup games, I think there is a different almost mentality to them where, there's always that saying, you beat what's in front of you. Sometimes you can take it for granted, i.e. Man United, but they're 2-0 down to Grimsby. I don't think Everton took it for granted last night, but it was very much a workmanlike performance from midfield to defence, goalkeeper, and then up front was that little bit of, trying to break the line, trying to cause problems, which, depending on your opinion, is whether we did or didn't do that. Just to highlight as well, guys, this show will be recorded and is out on Spotify and all your local streaming platforms, Amazon Music, Apple, so make sure you go and download it on there for me as well. But I think, look, I almost want to go through the team and talk about how we coped and how we managed. Fundamentally, Everton played through the channel. Michael Keane-Tarkowski is a solid 2 at the back. They've played every league game so far. Branthwaite being injured, it was only going to happen. And they looked assured. Tarkowski looked much more assured in this game than he had done in the previous, which makes sense. He's playing Mansfield. But it was better that they bounced back and kept a clean sheet. Now, we've seen Everton go into games like this and not keep a clean sheet. We've seen Everton go 1-0 down and have to come back and win the game. They didn't do that last night. It was funny, actually, because if you watch my match preview, I actually said it would be a draw at half-time and a win at full-time, and I called it spot on. But I think Everton, having that stability at the back, as a back 4 against Mansfield of Mykolenko, Keane, Tarkowski and Seamus Coleman, it's not a bad back 4. It probably is a back 4 that could play in the Premier League. Obviously, 3 of them do regularly, and Coleman's been injured, but Coleman has certainly still got an engine in him. He proved it last night. So there was that element that I liked, the fact that they didn't have loads of clear-cut chances. They had a couple, fair enough, but they didn't have loads, and Everton were able to cope with their press, with the way that they tried to play through the transitions. Now, they did have some moments, they did get some shots, but there was lots of blocks. There was lots of Everton players being able to get in front of the ball, which is really key. But then the ball would then transition into midfield, and this is where I was impressed. I was impressed with James Garner because he would pick up the ball and instead of passing backwards or passing sideways like he has done time and time again for years, relatively at Everton, he did something yesterday that I was really impressed with, and he would always try and carry the ball almost 10, 15 yards forward. Every time he got the ball, he turned and looked up. He'd come short to receive the ball and he carried it. And then he had an able runner next to him in Charlie Alcaraz, who was more than happy to try and pull the strings, make things happen, beat a person. He was tenacious if he lost the ball in a tackle. And again, Everton we've almost lacked that at times. Charlie Alcaraz, for me, last night demonstrated he can play in both a 6, an 8 or a 10. He scored a lovely goal, but yeah, he was defending happily. And he did that when he come on at the weekend against Brighton. I actually praised him for coming on and just being that solid, well runner. He actually looked quicker last night as well. So James Garner looked pacey. Charlie Alcaraz looked pacey. And they both were trying to play on the front foot. And that is something that Everton really lacked against Leeds. We really lacked it. You know, the amount of times we played the ball around the back and we were all getting frustrated. And last night against Mansfield and again against Brighton, we were trying to play the ball forward. And that is really, really key in any game. Because if you just sit in your half, you're just allowing that team to put pressure on you consistently. And that's a bad place. So, you know, I think in all fairness, I think this is a situation where if Everton can just consistently do that, they're going to get results. And they're going into games where I think they could get results. You know, we're playing Wolves the weekend, the match preview's out tomorrow. But they're going into games where you think, yeah, if we play like that, we're gonna get results. But that also means you've got options because, you know, there wasn't Idrissa Gana Guy, there wasn't Kieran Dewsbury Hall. Those two players were missing. So fundamentally, he was in that spot where we didn't think we had options, and yet we do apparently have options. So I was really happy with that as well. You then talk about the wide play, and you know, Grealish started on the left. And look, I'll be straight. I didn't think Grealish had a good game. You know, people were saying he was underutilised. I actually thought he looked fairly sluggish last night. It partly was down to the Mansfield team because they doubled up on him. They put a couple of fairly hefty tackles in relatively early, which might have almost put him off his stride or knocked him about. But irrespective, he would get back up. He tried to create things. I just didn't think he was almost as fluid as he usually is, you know, going down the left-hand side or trying to do too much. It was very 1-2. And there was a few lovely moments. You know, he had a lovely moment with James Garner and Charlie Alcaraz where they sort of fed it around each other and Charlie Alcaraz gets a shot off. But what I noticed with Grealish last night is if you do like put 2 or 3 on him, that obviously takes the players away from the other areas of the pitch. But Everton didn't have a player in a striker that would utilise that space. And that was one of the things that surprised me last night because Barry was heavily spoken about on like Monday Night Football by probably one of the best, if not the best, in Thierry Henry. And he was talking about how he makes space, how he moves the ball. I didn't see that last night against Mansfield. And I think that's an area of his game that he's got to improve. There's a lot of Everton fans that are already saying quite bad things about Barry. And look, he's a very young lad. I'm certainly not going to, you know, say he's not good enough for anything yet. But is he raw? Yeah. And we've had raw strikers before. We had Yusuf Chamita, who looks like he's on his way to Rangers. It might not work out at Everton longer term because it looks like there's going to be an obligation, an option to buy. So I just don't want Barry going down that route. I want Barry to develop. I want Barry to play games of football. Beto is someone that will run into those channels, and actually his connecting play last night was better. But again, he was playing Mansfield, so I'm not sitting here going, that's brilliant, that's great, because I would expect that from a Premier League striker costing £30 million. So that's sort of the left-hand side. We've spoke about Charlie Alcaraz. You'll notice the midfielder that we don't talk about, and I will talk about him in a minute. You then go onto the right-hand side, and there's Dwight McNeil. And look, I don't like just saying, you're done with players, because I've been here before with Dwight. We were here before with Dwight. Before Sean Dyche come into this team, we played Tamari Gray. And Dwight McNeil was brought in, was okay, but then was dropped from the side under Frank Lampard. Sean Dyche brought him straight back in. And ever since then, he's been okay. He's had moments of brilliance. He's had moments of being poor. But last night, he genuinely did look sluggish at times. And at times, he would carry the ball. He'd do well. He'd get into space. But he would then make the wrong decision. He wouldn't cross it. He wouldn't turn on it. He wouldn't shoot. There was one moment where he runs for about 20 yards, goes into the box and just carries on towards the corner flag. And you sit there and you think, well, why have you done that when you've got all of your other teammates around you and you could have pulled a shot off? Even if the shot's deflected, you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know if it's going to bounce out. You don't know if it's going to go to a player. But he just chose to carry the ball. And Dwight McNeil, I always thought was a footballer that had a football IQ, and I still do. But I just think he's losing it. Not necessarily through being poor or whatever, but I think he's trying to play a way that he doesn't know how to play. He's all of a sudden gone from being probably one of the first names on the team sheet just because he is a player that's got a left foot, can score goals, can carry the ball. It's not quick, but he's tenacious and he will put a foot in. To getting injured, and let's be fair, it wasn't a good injury and he did have a long time out last season. But then he's come into this season and he's not making a dent on any player who is in that team. And I genuinely think if there was the option for him to go out on a move, I could see it happening. I could see Dwight McNeil leaving before the summer transfer window ends, and I could see a replacement coming in of some type, who's probably got more dynamism, is maybe quicker, is more tenacious. I think that is kind of what I semi-expect to happen. I don't know if I think Dwight McNeil will be an Everton player in a week's time, because we're light anyway, but he did nothing to help himself last night. I didn't think he had a great game anyway. Then if we do want to talk about Barry, because I think it's important, we have mentioned how raw he is, but look, Barry is someone that he's clearly got ability. He's clearly got something. But it's going to take a while to see that. And you understand that because he's so young, he's come from a different league. He's almost, I think over the last 4 years, he's played for 4 different teams and every league has been almost a step up. If you define La Liga and the Premier League and you would say that the Premier League is a step up overall, then yeah, it's a step up, and he's playing a different style of football. The Premier League is very different to La Liga in terms of style. So you can understand how he's going to struggle to adapt. But Barry, for me, is a player that, yet again, if you play through the channel, looks good. If you play it into his feet, it's not as good. It's not as mobile. And that's not because he's not a good player. It's just because he needs to adapt to the physicality of the Premier League, and that will take time. David Moyes is the right man to do that. But David Moyes has never particularly been great with strikers in my mind. You think about the strikers Everton signed over the years under David Moyes. James Beattie, he went from a 20-goal a season striker at Southampton roughly to scoring, I think, 10 at Everton. Andy Johnson, 21 goals at Crystal Palace. I think he scored 9 or 10 in the season. Yakubu was the only one that sort of got close. I think he got 19 league goals in a season, but then he got injured and was never the same player again. He had Jalovic. Jalovic was great for 6 months. He was brilliant for 6 months, but then he was off it. So I do think David Moyes has got this tendency to get strikers wrong, which, don't get me wrong, I'm almost okay with in this season because he's got so much creativity behind them. I'm expecting goals. I'm expecting Grealish to get goals. I'm expecting NJ to get goals. Dewsbury Hall's got a goal in him. Garner's demonstrated he's got a goal in him. Charlie Alcaraz. they've got goals. There is goals across that midfield, and that's without mentioning Dibbling, by the way. So there is definitely goals in that team. But am I concerned that we've got enough firepower for the season and where Everton could finish? Yeah. Am I concerned with the fact that we've got Jack Grealish for a season and we may not be able to utilise him to his full potential because we haven't got a striker that is out for that level? Yeah. Do I think that's easy? No. You know, you look at Watermead, he looks like he's going to go to Newcastle for £85 million. Now, he's a fantastic footballer, but that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money for him. 6'6", fair enough, more than capable of getting goals, but 85 million. So it's not easy. But then you look at Everton's recruitment of strikers over the last 2 or 3 years, and do not get me wrong, all of this is not under David Moyes. Chimite, 12 million. Better, 30 million. Barry, the best part of 35 million. That's like 75 to 77, 78 million, 80 million, whatever. It's in that ballpark of transfer fees and strikers that, you know, Beto, he's never going to be a regular starter in this Everton team, in my opinion, consistently. I just don't think he's quite at the level. I love his passion. I love his everything he does for Everton. There's a clip going round today where he's playing headers and all that with 2 young lads in the crowd. I love it. I absolutely love that. That is Everton. You know, that is Everton. But it's what he does on the pitch for that 95, 96, 97 minutes, depending on who's winning. It tends to be 93, 94 if Everton are winning, if the opposition's winning, and really sink us while we're there, really. But the point I make is Beto is not the answer long term. And then you bring in Barry, who is raw, and he's certainly not the answer this season, in my opinion. Not a dig at him. I can't wait for him to come good, because he will. But do I think he's going to get you 10, 15, 20 goals this season? No, I don't. And then there's Chimite, who, I actually, every time I've seen Chimite, I thought, there's a player there. But we're not going to see it because it looks like he's going to Rangers, and I hope he absolutely rips it up in the Scottish League. I really, really hope he does. But the fundamentals are, while you've got Grealish on loan, Njai has been linked with a move away. I don't think he'll go this season, but there's always a possibility next season. You're not utilising the quality that you've bought in this season, and that worries me. So I think if I was David Moyes, I would look for another striker. But it's a tough world at the minute. A tough world at the minute as to who you bring in and how you're gonna, how much you're gonna spend. And I just don't think Everton have probably got the kitty left to go and do it. So that's a striking position. Now, we talked about midfield earlier, and we were talking about James Garner, and we were talking about, Charlie Alcaraz, for example. But one player that stood out to me last night, who was absolutely fantastic, was Harrison Armstrong. He's 18 years of age. And he did, like I described in my video last night, he did all the basics really well. To the point where it surprised me how he just kept popping up. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Like, if there was somebody who needed to put a foot in, he would be there. If there was someone that needed to carry the ball out, he could be there. If there was someone who needed to lay off an assist, he could be there. And the occasion clearly doesn't get to him. They've been talking about sending him out on loan, and for me, he only goes on loan if he goes to a Premier League team. Because there is no point Harrison Armstrong going into the Championship. There's just no point. He's not going to develop to the level he can do. I see Harrison Armstrong as a Morgan Gibbs-White at Wolves, who was coming into this team young and really developed, was almost then lost his way, went to Forest and demonstrated how brilliant he is and was. Harrison Armstrong, for me, is a player that is more than capable of playing for England and all of those really positive accolades, because he's got everything. He's not slow, he's strong, he can carry the ball, he can shoot, he can pass, he can cross, he can do everything. He's got a bit of skill on him. And last night he demonstrated all the things. And then on top of those things, whereas you've got players like Barry, who's maybe raw, Diblin, who's raw, he was calm. He was calm. In situations he had the ball on the edge of the box, he was doing pirouettes and dragging the ball back to lay off Charlie Alcaraz for a goal. Calm, under pressure. The goal for Beto, he picks up the ball really well. He waits for the pass. He passes the ball across the box. It's a goal. It's so calm and easy, yet every time you look at the way that he plays football, it's relaxed. He is, in my opinion, Harrison Armstrong is someone that you either loan to a Premier League team or he stays in this team and he plays, he gets minutes. I've also been relatively impressed with Tim over the last 2 games. You know, he come in last night, I thought he was disruptive, he was aggressive when he needed to be, and they had some physicality in that midfield. He was more than prepared to do that. I thought he was brilliant against Brighton. He had a poor game against Leeds. But this is what you're going to get with young players. You're going to get inconsistency. To me, last night, I sat there and I thought, look, this is a game that Everton have won. I didn't think it was a great performance. I thought it was boring. But in terms of the younger players being able to demonstrate just how capable they are, yeah, that excited me. That excited me because that team was a relatively young team last night and they did a very decent job against very experienced professionals in Mansfield, which is positive. Wolves is a different game, and we'll talk about that in the match preview tomorrow. But for me, I was really happy with those performances. And look, Mark Travers, he started the game as Everton's number 2. He put very little wrong, did he? He did very little wrong. He was calm and composed. His passing, his distribution was okay. There was one clearance, which I thought was poor. The ball comes back to his left foot and he sort of takes a swing at it and it only goes about 25 yards to a chest height of a Mansfield player. But apart from that, he wasn't too bad at all. So all in all, from a debrief perspective, yeah, I'm happy that we got 3 points. I'm happy that we are through to the next round. Wolves away is a rubbish draw because you just don't know what to expect. But if it's anything like I'm expecting the weekend to be, then I'm expecting Everton to go through to the next round. So all in all, fingers crossed, we deliver, we keep smashing it, we keep going, we keep doing things. But yeah, Everton appear to be on the up and up, and that is really, really, really positive. The other thing to mention just quickly is that when we've got the ball now, we don't seem to panic. We don't seem to lose our heads, and that's a whole team thing now. Whereas before, I think at times we would panic and we almost, under Sean Dyche, for example, we would never have the ball. We would just kick it and hope for the best. Last night and during this Moyes tenure, we have sort of demonstrated that we like to keep the ball. Now, don't get me wrong, some games it's been awful. Leeds was a really bad example, a really poor performance. But Brighton and Mansfield have been decent for that element. And that's only going to get better as the more players adapt and gel. So again, positives. So look, all in all, it wasn't a great game. But am I happy with the result? Yes. Am I happy to be going away to Wolves? Not really. I'd rather have had a Grimsby, for example, at the Hill Dickinson, who did a phenomenal job against Manchester United. And that was a fairy tale, really. And credit to the Mansfield fans who stayed behind at the Hill Dickinson last night because they were watching the game on the screens, and it was their ex-goalkeeper who was in goal for Mansfield. So big love to them for that. But yeah, all in all, we keep going, we keep pushing, and let's just win the lot. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the debrief. Make sure you check it out and subscribe, hit the like button. Make sure that if you are listening to this on Spotify, that you just continue to download and you follow Amazon Music and Apple Pods, whatever they're called. Make sure you follow all of that. Until the next time, I'll see you soon. Peace.